The summer sun hung low over Glen Ellen, Illinois, casting long shadows across the quiet streets of a town where nothing ever seemed to go wrong. On July 21, 1985, a 15-year-old girl named Christy Wesselman stepped out of her house, her sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway. She was headed to the corner store, just a 5-minute walk away, to grab a soda and a chocolate bar for herself and her mom. Her mother, Karen, glanced at the clock, 3:30 p.m., expecting her back before the ice in her glass melted. But as the minutes ticked by, a creeping unease settled in. Christy never returned. What happened to Christy Wesselman that afternoon? For true crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and anyone captivated by mysteries that defy explanation, this is a story that will pull you in and refuse to let go. It's a tale of a small-town tragedy, a decades-long investigation, and a truth so unexpected it would shock everyone involved. Stick with me as we unravel a case that haunted a community for 30 years, revealing clues at every turn that will keep you guessing. Miss this, and you'll miss one of the most gripping true crime stories ever told. Background and setup: Glen Ellen, Illinois, in the mid-1980s, was the kind of place where kids left their bikes unlocked and parents didn't think twice about letting their children roam the neighborhood. Nestled in DuPage County, about 25 miles west of Chicago, it was a postcard-perfect suburb with tree-lined streets, modest homes, and a reputation as one of the safest towns in the area. Crime was rare, and violent crime was unheard of. For the Wesselman family, this sense of security was part of everyday life. Christy Wesselman, born on April 19, 1970, was the youngest of 4 siblings, 2 older brothers and a sister. She lived with her mother, Karen, in a cozy home filled with the noise of a busy family. Christy was a vibrant, outgoing teenager with a contagious smile and a knack for making friends. At Glenbard West High School, she was a popular student, elected vice president of her class, and a standout athlete who played volleyball and softball. Her summers were filled with laughter, bike rides, and long afternoons spent with neighborhood kids, wandering the streets or hanging out at the local McDonald's. In the summer of 1985, Christy was 15 and taking summer classes to get ahead in school. She balanced her studies with her social life, often meeting friends at the nearby convenience store or grabbing a burger at the fast food joint down the road. The store, a small mom and pop shop, was a familiar spot for local kids, stocked with candy bars, sodas, and the kind of snacks that fueled teenage adventures. It was so close to the Wesselman home that the walk took less than 5 minutes, often through a shortcut across a vacant lot, a field of tall grass with a narrow path worn down by countless footsteps. On July 21, 1985, Christy came home from her summer class around 3:30 p.m., her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was in high spirits, chatting with her mom about her day. Karen, busy in the kitchen, asked if Christy could run to the store to pick up a couple of treats. "Sure, Mom," Christy replied, grabbing a few dollars from the counter. "I'll be right back." Those were the last words Karen would hear from her daughter. The crime: as Christy stepped out into the warm July afternoon, the neighborhood was alive with the sounds of summer, kids playing in yards, the hum of a lawnmower, the distant bark of a dog. She walked the familiar route toward the store, likely taking the shortcut through the vacant lot. The field, surrounded by houses and just a stone's throw from the store, was overgrown with waist-high grass, its narrow path barely visible from the street. It was a place where kids darted through without a second thought, but on this day, it would become a scene of unspeakable tragedy. Inside the store, the clerk, a man who lived nearby and had known Christy since she was a toddler, watched her browse the aisles. She picked out a chocolate bar and a soda, paid with a smile, and left around 4 p.m. She seemed happy, the clerk later told police. Nothing out of the ordinary. Christy tucked her purchases into her pocket and stepped back into the sunlight, heading toward the shortcut that would take her home. But somewhere along that path, something went terribly wrong. Christy never made it back to her house. As the minutes stretched into hours, Karen's worry grew. At first, she thought Christy might have stopped to chat with friends. Teenagers were known to lose track of time. But as evening fell and the sky darkened, panic set in. Karen called Christy's friends, but none had seen her. She walked to the store herself, scanning the streets, her heart pounding. There was no sign of her daughter. By 1:50 a.m., with no trace of Christy, Karen called the Glen Ellen Police Department. "My daughter's missing," she said, her voice trembling. "She went to the store and didn't come back." Officers arrived quickly, their flashlights cutting through the night as they began retracing Christie's steps. They interviewed the store clerk, who confirmed Christie's visit, and spoke to neighbors who'd been out that afternoon. No one had seen anything unusual. The search continued through the night, with officers combing the streets and volunteers joining the effort. By midday on July 22nd, a new shift of detectives took over. One officer, Detective John Sullivan, suggested focusing on the shortcut through the vacant lot. "Kids always take that path," he said. "If something happened, it might have been there." He set out alone, pushing through the tall grass, his eyes scanning the ground. Then, about halfway through the field, something caught his attention, a patch of grass that looked disturbed. Sullivan parted the overgrowth, and his breath caught in his throat. There, hidden among the weeds, was Christie Wesselman's body. Her clothes were disheveled, her face pale, her eyes staring blankly at the sky. Sullivan radioed for backup, his voice steady but urgent. "We've got a body, it's her." The scene was cordoned off as forensic specialists arrived, their cameras flashing in the midday sun. The medical examiner's report would later reveal the horrific details. Christie had been stabbed 8 times, her body bearing evidence of sexual assault. The killer had left biological material at the scene, but in 1985, DNA testing was in its infancy, and the sample was stored for future analysis. One detail stood out to Karen. Christie's pearl ring, a gift she always wore, was missing. She never took it off, Karen told police. "If it's not here, the killer must have it." Investigation. The discovery of Christie's body sent shockwaves through Glen Ellen. A town that prided itself on safety was now grappling with a brutal murder. The police launched a full-scale investigation, determined to find the killer. They started by interviewing everyone who might have seen Christie that day. Neighbors, store customers, and passers-by were questioned, but no one recalled anything suspicious. The field, despite being just yards from a residential area, had shielded the crime from view. A family hosting a barbecue nearby hadn't heard a sound. A gas station employee, working 60 yards away, reported a normal shift. Detectives theorized that the killer had either followed Christie from the store or encountered her in the field. The absence of screams suggested she might have known her attacker, or that the assault was so swift she had no time to react. "It was like she vanished into thin air," one officer remarked. The police canvassed the neighborhood, compiling a list of men with violent criminal records. They also investigated those who knew Christie, including the store clerk, who had babysat her years earlier. His alibi checked out, and he was cleared. With no physical evidence beyond the biological sample, the investigation hit a wall. Detectives kept an eye on local pawn shops, hoping the missing pearl ring might surface, but it never did. Tips poured in, but most led nowhere. For 3 years, the case stagnated, leaving Christie's family in a limbo of grief and unanswered questions. In 1988, a breakthrough seemed possible. DNA analysis was becoming a viable tool in criminal investigations, and detectives decided to test the stored sample against potential suspects. They collected DNA from dozens of men who had been on their radar, but none matched. One man, Dana Henry, a 34-year-old local who lived near the field, refused to provide a sample. His refusal raised red flags. "If he's innocent, why won't he cooperate?" Detective Sullivan asked. The police obtained a court order, but Henry fought it, insisting he was innocent. After days in jail for contempt of court, he relented. The results were conclusive. His DNA didn't match. Henry was released, but the ordeal destroyed his life. He spent $50,000 on legal fees, lost his home, and became a pariah in Glen Ellen. "They ruined me," he later told reporters. And no one ever apologized. In 1989, another strange twist emerged. A local man named Willis began harassing Christie's family with bizarre tips about the killer's identity. For 4 years, he sent letters and made calls, each lead more outlandish than the last. Exasperated, the family obtained a restraining order. Police investigated Willis but found no connection to the crime. He was just obsessed with the case, one detective noted. By 2000, the killer's DNA was uploaded to the FBI's CODIS database, but no matches were found. The case went cold, revisited only when new tips surfaced. Over the years, the original detectives retired, and a new team took over. Christie's mother, Karen, held on to hope, but after decades of dead ends, she began to fear the killer would never be caught. Outcome and aftermath. In 2015, everything changed. One morning, the Glen Ellyn Police Department received a notification from the FBI. The DNA from Christie's case had matched a profile in Cody's. The sample belonged to Michael Jones, a 62-year-old man living in Champaign, Illinois, 150 miles from Glen Ellyn. Jones had been arrested for domestic violence, and under a 2002 Illinois law, championed by a state's attorney inspired by Christie's case, his DNA was collected. The match stunned detectives. Jones had never appeared in the investigation. He wasn't a suspect, a witness, or even a name mentioned in passing. It was like he came out of nowhere, said Detective Lisa Carter, who led the new team. Investigators dug into Jones's past and uncovered a chilling history. In the 1970s, he had assaulted a woman but faced no serious consequences. In 1976, he attacked another woman, leaving her in a hospital parking lot. He served 6 years of a 10 to 20-year sentence, released in 1983, 2 years before Christie's murder. Jones's early release outraged his previous victim, who said she would have fought it had she been notified. After his release, Jones married, but his first wife left him in 1994, citing his disturbing interest in a young relative. In 1999, he was arrested for assaulting a family member. He often took solo motorcycle trips, passing through areas like Glen Ellyn en route to Chicago. He was a ghost, Carter said. In and out of town, invisible to us. Police obtained a fresh DNA sample from Jones, confirming the match. On September 18, 2015, they charged him with Christie's murder. Jones denied involvement, but the evidence was irrefutable. His ex-girlfriend provided further insight, describing his volatile temper and obsession with crime stories. He knew how to avoid getting caught, she said. Detectives suspected he might be linked to other unsolved crimes, but no additional charges were filed. The case went to trial in 2018, after 3 years of legal wrangling. Prosecutors sought a life sentence, but Jones pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, receiving 80 years with no parole until 2095. At 65, he would die behind bars. Christie's family expressed relief but also anger. If he'd served his full sentence in '83, my daughter would be alive, Karen said at the sentencing. Dana Henry attended the trial, watching as the real killer was sentenced. I thought it would bring closure, he said later. But it didn't. The police never said sorry for what they did to me. The case left a lasting mark on Glen Ellyn, shattering its sense of invincibility. Media outlets covered the resolution, praising the persistence of investigators and the power of DNA technology. Closing reflection. Christy Wesselman's story is a haunting reminder that even in the safest corners of the world, darkness can strike without warning. For 30 years, her killer roamed free, living a life unmarked by suspicion while her family carried the weight of an unsolved loss. The truth, when it finally emerged, was both a triumph of justice and a painful reckoning with the failures that allowed a predator to slip through the cracks. As we reflect on Christie's life, cut short but never forgotten, we're left to wonder, how many other mysteries lie buried, waiting for a single clue to bring them into the light?